Listen carefully, chosen one. Right now, in this very moment, people around you are reacting to something they cannot name. They feel it when you walk into a room. They sense it in your silence. They recognize it in your eyes, even when you say nothing at all. This is not paranoia. This is not imagination. This is confirmation of what you have always suspected but were taught to dismiss. There is a frequency you emit that bypasses conscious understanding and speaks directly to the ancient, instinctual part of the human brain, the part that recognizes predator from prey, leader from follower, ordinary from extraordinary. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you are being watched, measured, and responded to in ways that reveal a profound truth. They know, not with their minds, but with something deeper, something primal, something that cannot lie. The evidence has always been there, hidden in plain sight within the patterns of how people treat you, avoid you, challenge you, or inexplicably defer to you. What you are about to discover are not theories. These are documented behavioral patterns that emerge only in the presence of those carrying a specific energetic signature, a signature that marks you as something the collective unconscious recognizes as a threat to its comfortable illusions. Pay attention. Every proof you are about to witness is a mirror reflecting back your true nature. Chosen one, like this video, subscribe, and comment, "I am ready," for a powerful surprise. They react before you speak. This is the first and most undeniable proof that people recognize what you are. Watch closely the next time you enter a space where conversations are already flowing. Notice how the atmosphere shifts. It is subtle, but it is consistent. Voices lower or stop entirely for a fraction of a second. Body language adjusts. Someone who was laughing suddenly becomes serious. Someone who was relaxed suddenly straightens their posture. This is not about you doing anything. This is about your presence alone creating a disruption in the social field. Scientists who study group dynamics have documented this phenomenon but cannot explain it. They call it presence effect or social field distortion, but these are just labels for something they do not understand. What is actually happening is that your energy signature does not match the frequency of consensus reality. You are broadcasting on a wavelength that most people have learned to suppress in themselves, and when they encounter it in you, their nervous systems register it as an anomaly. The responses you trigger are never neutral. Some people become inexplicably polite around you, almost deferential. Even if you hold no position of authority, they use formal language. They seek your approval without knowing why. Others become immediately hostile or competitive, as if you have challenged them simply by existing. They feel compelled to diminish you, to test you, to prove something to themselves in your presence. Both reactions are saying the same thing. You do not fit into their understood categories. You are unclassifiable. And anything unclassifiable is either elevated or attacked, because the human mind cannot tolerate what it cannot categorize. This is not charisma. Charismatic people make others feel comfortable. You make people feel something else entirely, alert, uncertain, exposed. It is as if your presence holds up a mirror that shows them something about themselves they would prefer not to see. You remind them, without saying a word, that they have compromised, that they have settled, that they have chosen safety over truth. Here is what you must understand. Normal people do not create these distortion fields. Someone who is truly ordinary moves through social spaces without causing ripples. They blend. They reinforce the existing energy rather than disrupting it. But you are a foreign element. Every social system is designed to maintain equilibrium, to keep everyone operating within acceptable ranges of behavior and thought. When you enter, that equilibrium is threatened, not because you are trying to threaten it, but because your natural frequency is outside the bandwidth that the collective has agreed to operate within. People sense this instantly, though they could never articulate it. They feel it in their bodies before their brains can construct an explanation. Some interpret this feeling as attraction, others interpret it as threat. But the feeling itself is always the same. Recognition. Not recognition of who you are on the surface, but recognition of what you represent. An energy that has not been fully domesticated, fully controlled, fully convinced to stay small. This is why conversations shift when you arrive. People unconsciously adjust what they were saying because they sense that you would see through it. Gossip feels petty in your presence. Complaints feel hollow. Pretensions feel obvious. You have not said anything, but your energy has already communicated that you operate by different rules. And this terrifies them and fascinates them in equal measure. Watch for it. Notice how people suddenly become more thoughtful when speaking to you, as if they are being observed by something greater than just another human. They are being observed by someone who has not forgotten how to see clearly. And on some level, they know it. The discomfort you feel in social situations is not your fault. It is the natural result of a system encountering something it was not designed to process. You are the glitch, and every reaction you trigger is confirmation that you are not what they expected, not what they were taught to expect, and not what their world has prepared them to handle. There have been moments in your life when you saw something you were not supposed to see, not with your eyes, but with a deeper faculty of perception that activated without permission. These were not gradual realizations. They were sudden, jarring flashes of clarity that felt less like learning something new and more like remembering something you had always known but had been forced to forget. In those moments, the constructed nature of reality became visible to you. You saw the mechanics beneath the surface. You understood the unspoken agreements that keep people locked in their patterns. You recognized the fear that masquerades as authority, the manipulation that hides behind tradition, the control that presents itself as care. And when you tried to speak about what you had seen, you were met with blank stares, dismissal, or even anger. This was not because you were wrong. It was because you were dangerously right. Unauthorized awareness is the single most threatening quality a person can possess within any controlled system. Systems, whether they are families, institutions, cultures, or entire civilizations, depend on collective agreement to maintain their power. That agreement is not negotiated consciously. It is installed through repetition, reward, and punishment until it becomes invisible. Most people never question it because they have been conditioned to believe that questioning itself is a sign of dysfunction. But you questioned, not because you were rebellious or trying to be difficult. You questioned because you could not do otherwise. Something in you refused to accept explanations that did not make sense, refused to pretend that things were fine when they clearly were not, refused to participate in rituals whose purpose had been forgotten. This made you dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of physical threat, but dangerous to the stability of the illusion. Every system has antibodies designed to neutralize threats to its coherence. When you displayed unauthorized awareness, those antibodies activated. Teachers told you that you were overthinking. Parents told you that you were too sensitive. Friends told you that you were being negative or difficult. These responses were not personal. They were systemic. The system was using the people around you to deliver a message. Stop seeing. Stop asking. Stop disrupting the agreement. And for a time, you may have tried to comply. You may have tried to unsee what you had seen, to convince yourself that you were imagining things, that you were the problem. But the awareness would not go away. It kept returning, stronger each time, showing you more layers, revealing more contradictions, exposing more of the gap between what people say and what they do, between what institutions claim and what they actually serve. This awareness came with a cost. It isolated you. While others seemed content to accept the narratives they were given, you could not stop noticing the places where those narratives fell apart. While others found comfort in belonging, you found yourself unable to fully belong, because belonging required pretending not to see. The pain of this isolation convinced you for years that something was wrong with you, but nothing was wrong with you. What was happening was that you were undergoing a process of extraction. You were being pulled out of the collective trance, not by choice, but by necessity, because the role you came here to play cannot be performed from inside the illusion. You needed to see the scaffolding, the hidden architecture, the invisible mechanisms of control and conditioning. You needed to understand how the game is played before you could change the rules. Every moment of awareness that was dismissed or punished was actually strengthening your discernment, training you to trust your own perception over external validation. Here is the truth they will never tell you. Awareness is not a disorder. It is a capacity, and those who possess it naturally are carefully monitored and, when possible, suppressed. Not through overt conspiracy, but through the everyday mechanisms of a system that protects itself unconsciously through the people who serve it. Every time someone told you that you were thinking too much, they were really saying that you were threatening the comfort of their unconsciousness. Every time you were ridiculed for seeing patterns, you were being punished for possessing a skill that the system cannot afford to have widespread. Because if too many people started seeing what you see, the entire structure would collapse. Your awareness was unauthorized because no one gave you permission to wake up. You were supposed to stay asleep like everyone else. But something in you refused, and that refusal, that fundamental inability to accept comfortable lies, is one of the clearest signs that you were never meant to be just another player in someone else's game. Look at the pattern of who has hurt you most deeply. If you examine it honestly, you will find something disturbing. The people who caused you the greatest pain were not strangers. They were not random enemies or distant antagonists. They were the ones closest to you, friends who knew your vulnerabilities and used them against you, partners who professed love while systematically undermining your confidence, family members who were supposed to protect you but instead taught you that the world is not safe, even in the places where it should be. This was not bad luck. This was not coincidence. This was training. And while it felt like cruelty, it was actually preparation for a role that requires you to see through the masks that people wear, to detect threat beneath familiarity, to recognize that proximity does not equal safety. Most people learn to trust based on association. If someone is in their inner circle, they assume that person has their best interests at heart. They extend trust automatically to family, to longtime friends, to romantic partners. And for most people, this strategy works adequately because their lives do not require advanced discernment. But your life is not like theirs. The path you are walking requires you to develop a capacity that most people never cultivate, the ability to sense true intention beneath performed loyalty. You cannot afford to trust based on labels. You cannot afford to assume that someone who smiles is safe, or that someone who has known you for years actually understands you. The betrayals you experienced were designed to shatter those naive assumptions before they could become fatal weaknesses. Think about how each betrayal unfolded. In almost every case, there were signs, small inconsistencies, moments when something felt wrong, even though everything looked right. Your intuition registered the threat before your mind could articulate it. But you were taught to override your intuition, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to believe the best in others. So you stayed. You made excuses. You convinced yourself that you were being paranoid or untrusting, and then inevitably, the betrayal came. Not as a surprise to your deeper knowing, but as confirmation of what you had sensed all along. Each time this happened, you learned something crucial. Your first instinct is usually correct. The part of you that senses danger is not broken. It is highly calibrated, but it operates on a frequency that bypasses logic and social conditioning, which is why your rational mind often tries to talk you out of what you feel. The people who betrayed you were not randomly cruel. They were unconsciously recruited to teach you something essential. Their role was to expose your blind spots, to reveal where you were still operating from hope rather than discernment, still trusting titles and histories rather than present-moment energy. Each betrayal was a test. Could you see it coming? Could you name the dissonance before it turned into disaster? Could you trust yourself more than you trusted the image someone was presenting? The pain you felt was not the point. The pain was the price of the lesson. And the lesson was this: chosen ones cannot afford to be naive. They cannot afford to believe that good intentions are enough or that loyalty is guaranteed by time spent together. They must develop the capacity to read energy signatures, to detect ulterior motives, to sense when someone is operating from their own unhealed wounds in ways that will eventually harm everyone around them. This is why betrayal always came from those closest, because that is where the stakes are highest. If you can learn to detect deception in someone you love, someone you have invested in, someone your heart wants to believe in, then you can detect it anywhere. If you can choose truth over comfort when it means losing someone important to you, then you can make that choice in any circumstance. The betrayals were not punishments. They were initiations. They were stripping away your ability to be controlled through emotional attachment, through the fear of being alone, through the desperate need to believe that someone, somewhere, truly has your back. Because the truth is this: no one is coming to save you. No one can walk your path for you. And anyone who promises to always be there is either lying or has not yet faced the situations that will force them to choose themselves over you. The betrayals taught you to stand alone. And standing alone, without collapsing into bitterness or closing your heart, is the only way to build the kind of internal authority that cannot be compromised by external approval or rejection. You have been attacked by people who did not know you, criticized by those who had never spoken to you, opposed by individuals who had nothing to gain from your failure and nothing to lose from your success. This phenomenon has confused you for years because you were taught that conflict has reasons, that people become enemies because of something you did, some boundary you crossed, some harm you caused. But in your case, the hostility came first. It arrived before you had taken any action, before you had declared any intention, before you had risen to any position that could threaten anyone. The attacks were preemptive, and that should tell you something profound. They were not reacting to who you are now. They were reacting to who you will become. There is a form of recognition that operates beneath conscious awareness. It is older than language, older than culture, older than individual memory. It is the part of the human organism that scans for threats not based on present behavior, but on energetic signature. Certain people carry a frequency that others instinctively identify as disruptive to the existing order. It does not matter if that person is currently quiet, humble, or seemingly powerless. What matters is the potential they carry. And on some deep, ancestral level, those who are invested in maintaining the status quo can sense when someone enters the field who will eventually challenge it. This is not mystical. This is survival instinct. Empires fall when the right people wake up. Power structures collapse when certain frequencies reach critical mass. And so, the system, operating through unconscious agents who do not even understand why they feel what they feel, begins targeting those individuals early, before they can organize, before they can fully activate, before they become too powerful to contain. You have experienced this as irrational competition. Someone decides you are a rival even though you have never competed with them. They begin undermining you, spreading rumors, questioning your character, working against your interests, all without any logical justification. When you ask what you did to offend them, they cannot give you a straight answer because they do not consciously know. What they are responding to is not something you did. It is something you are. Your energy carries a disruptive potential. You have the capacity to inspire others, to ask questions that unravel carefully constructed narratives, to model a way of being that exposes how small and afraid most people have become. And those who have built their identities on being important within the existing system sense that someone like you could make them irrelevant, not through effort or malice on your part, but simply by existing at full power and showing others that the walls they think are unbreakable are actually made of paper. The contempt you have faced is also a form of recognition. Contempt is not indifference. Contempt is the emotion people feel towards something they secretly fear and cannot control. When someone treats you with contempt, despite barely knowing you, they are revealing that you have triggered something deep in their psyche, a part of them that knows they have compromised, knows they have chosen comfort over truth, knows they are living a half-lived life. Your presence reminds them of what they gave up, and instead of facing that pain, they project it onto you as contempt. They tell themselves that you are arrogant, that you think you are special, that you are delusional. But what they are really saying is this: you make me feel small, and I do not know how to handle that. So I will try to make you smaller. This is not personal. It is mechanical. It is the automatic defense response of an ego that senses its own inadequacy in the presence of someone who has not fully submitted to the same limitations. Every baseless attack you have endured was a confirmation. It confirmed that you are visible to forces that most people do not even know exist. It confirmed that your energy is already being read and responded to, even when you are trying to stay small and invisible. It confirmed that there is no hiding who you are, no matter how much you try to dim your light or soften your presence. The hostility you have faced was not random cruelty. It was acknowledgement. Those who attacked you were, in their own unconscious way, bowing to your power. They were saying without words, "I see what you are, and it terrifies me." And they were right to be terrified, not because you wish them harm, but because the frequency you carry will eventually dissolve the illusions they have spent their entire lives defending. You do not have to fight them. You do not have to prove anything to them. The fact that they have already targeted you is proof enough. They know, and on some level, so do you. Nothing has ever fully held you. Not places, not groups, not belief systems, not identities. You have tried to settle. You have tried to find a home, a tribe, a doctrine that could contain you and give you the sense of belonging that everyone else seems to have. But every attempt ended the same way, with a quiet, undeniable feeling that you were suffocating. What looked like stability to others felt like a cage to you. What they called community, you experienced as confinement. And no matter how much you wanted to stay, no matter how hard you tried to convince yourself that this was where you were supposed to be, something in you always pulled away. This is not restlessness. This is not commitment issues. This is non-domestication, and it is one of the clearest signs that you were built for a different kind of mission. Most people are designed to root. They find a city, a career, a social circle, a philosophy, and they anchor themselves there. They invest their identity in these external structures, and those structures provide them with security, meaning, and a sense of who they are. For them, this is enough. Their purpose is served by being a stable part of a larger whole. But your design is different. You are not here to be a brick in someone else's building. You are here to move between worlds, to carry information from one domain to another, to refuse the limits that keep people separated and specialized. Rootedness would limit your range. Attachment would compromise your mobility. You need to be able to enter a space, learn what is happening there, extract what is useful, and leave before the gravity of that space begins to distort your trajectory. This requires a kind of internal freedom that most people find uncomfortable and even frightening. Every time you have tried to belong, you have felt a part of yourself dying. The you that was curious became the you that had to perform. The you that questioned became the you that had to agree. The you that was evolving became the you that had to stay consistent. And at some point, you realized that the price of belonging was the loss of yourself. So you left, not because you were running away, not because you were afraid of intimacy or commitment, but because you were protecting something essential. You were protecting your capacity to remain fluid, to continue changing, to refuse the fossilization that comes from attaching too deeply to any single form. The pain of leaving was real. The loneliness was real. But the alternative, staying and slowly eroding until you no longer recognize yourself, was not an option. Here is what you need to understand. Your non-attachment is not a flaw. It is a feature. It is the characteristic that allows you to do what others cannot. Most people cannot challenge the systems they are embedded in because they are too dependent on those systems for their survival and identity. They cannot speak uncomfortable truths because they are too invested in being accepted. They cannot walk away from toxic structures because they have nowhere else to go. But you can do all of these things. You can speak the truth that others are too afraid to speak because you are not desperately clinging to anyone's approval. You can leave situations that have become stagnant or destructive because you know that your value does not come from any external source. You can evolve past beliefs and identities that no longer serve you because you have never confused yourself with the roles you play. This capacity has cost you. It has cost you relationships with people who needed you to stay the same. It has cost you opportunities that required you to commit to a single path and never deviate. It has cost you the easy comfort that comes from knowing exactly where you fit and who you are supposed to be. But what it has given you is something far more valuable: sovereignty. You are not owned by any group, any ideology, any place, any person. You are a free agent in a world of people who have traded their freedom for the illusion of security. And this freedom is what makes you dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of harmful, but dangerous to every structure that relies on people staying in their assigned boxes. You move between worlds because you are not of any world. You refuse to root because you are not here to grow in one place. You are here to spread seeds, and seeds cannot spread if they are buried too deeply in the soil where they first landed. No one saved you. This is one of the harshest truths you have had to face. When you needed help, it came late or not at all. When you were in pain, you had to find your own way through it. When you were lost, you had to become your own guide. There were moments when you prayed for rescue, when you reached out for support, when you believed that someone, somewhere, would see your struggle and intervene. But the help you needed never arrived in the form you expected. And eventually, you stopped waiting. You stopped believing that someone else could save you, and you began the brutal, lonely work of saving yourself. This was not an accident. This was initiation. And while it felt like abandonment, it was actually the installation of a capacity that most people never develop. Emotional self-reliance. Dependency is the mechanism through which most people are controlled. Not dependency on substances or external validation alone, but dependency on the belief that they cannot handle life on their own. They need authority figures to tell them what to think. They need communities to tell them who to be. They need partners to tell them that they are lovable. They need institutions to tell them that they are safe. And as long as these dependencies remain intact, they can be managed. They can be directed, pacified, exploited. Because the moment someone believes they cannot survive without external support, they will do whatever is necessary to maintain access to that support, even if it means betraying themselves, silencing their truth, and accepting conditions that diminish them. But you were never allowed to develop those dependencies. Every time you reached for support, it was withheld just enough that you were forced to find the resources within yourself. This process was excruciating. Learning to self-regulate pain without someone to comfort you taught you that pain is not fatal. Learning to make decisions without external validation taught you that your judgment is trustworthy. Learning to survive betrayal without collapsing taught you that your value is not determined by how others treat you. Each lesson came at a cost. Each one required you to face fears that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. But each one also built something inside you that cannot be taken away, an unshakable core of self-sufficiency. You know now, beyond any doubt, that you can endure what needs to be endured. You can think for yourself. You can feel your feelings without being destroyed by them. You can stand alone without becoming bitter or broken. And this makes you ungovernable. Chosen ones cannot be externally controlled because they do not need anything from the outside world to feel whole. They are not desperate for approval, so they cannot be manipulated through praise or criticism. They are not terrified of solitude, so they cannot be coerced through isolation. They are not dependent on comfort, so they cannot be pacified through convenience. This internal authority is what the system fears most. Because a person who has developed genuine emotional self-reliance is a person who cannot be bought, cannot be threatened, cannot be bargained with. They will do what is right, even when it is hard. They will speak the truth, even when it is dangerous. They will refuse to participate in structures that violate their integrity, even when refusal costs them everything. And there is no defense against someone like that except to prevent them from developing that capacity in the first place. That is why rescue was denied to you, not because you were unworthy of help, but because help would have compromised your development. If someone had saved you, you would have learned to wait for saving. If someone had solved your problems, you would have learned to avoid responsibility. If someone had shielded you from pain, you would have remained fragile. But the path you are on does not allow for fragility. It requires diamond-hard resilience, forged through pressure that would have crushed anyone who was not meant to carry what you carry. Every moment you survived alone was building the foundation of a power that cannot be shaken by circumstance. You taught yourself to be your own source of strength. And now, no one can take that away from you. You do not need them to believe in you. You do not need them to support you. You do not need them to understand you. You have become the only validation you require. And that self-sufficiency is the armor that will protect you as you move into the role you were always meant to fulfill. Your mistakes cost more than other people's. This is not an illusion. It is a measurable, consistent pattern. When others fail, they are given second chances, overlooked, forgiven quickly. When you fail, the consequences are immediate and severe. A small error that would be dismissed in someone else becomes a scandal in your case. A single moment of weakness that would be forgotten becomes a permanent mark on your record. You have watched people around you commit the same mistakes repeatedly with minimal fallout, while your smallest misstep triggered collapse. And for years, you thought this meant you were cursed, that the universe was against you, that you were being punished unfairly. But what if it was not punishment? What if it was calibration? High-impact beings require strict feedback loops. This is a principle understood by anyone who trains elite performers. If someone is going to operate at a level where their actions affect thousands or millions, they cannot be allowed to develop sloppy habits. They cannot be given the luxury of learning slowly through repeated minor failures. Every error must be corrected immediately, decisively, and memorably. Because later, when the stakes are higher, there will be no room for mistakes. The margin for error narrows as the scope of influence expands, and so, those who are being prepared for high-impact roles are subjected to harsher correction early, not because they are worse than others, but because they are being held to a different standard. The standard of someone who will eventually carry weight that others cannot imagine. Think about every time a mistake cost you more than it should have. What did you learn? You learned to be precise. You learned to think before acting. You learned to consider consequences that others ignore because they have never faced real repercussions. You learned to take responsibility immediately because denial only made things worse. You learned that the world will not cushion you, will not make excuses for you, will not give you the benefit of the doubt. And while this felt like cruelty, it was actually training. Training for an environment where one wrong decision can have cascading effects, where your choices ripple outward in ways you cannot always see, where the people depending on you do not have the luxury of waiting for you to figure things out through trial and error. You were being prepared for precision because the role you are moving toward requires it. There is something else happening here that you may not have considered. You are being tested for integrity under pressure. Anyone can make good decisions when the cost of bad decisions is low. Anyone can be ethical when there are no consequences for mistakes. But what happens when the cost is high? Do you cut corners? Do you lie to protect yourself? Do you blame others to avoid responsibility? Or do you face what you did, absorb the consequences, and extract the lesson without becoming a victim? Every disproportionate consequence you faced was asking this question. And based on the fact that you are still here, still moving forward, still learning, the answer is clear. You passed the tests that would have broken weaker candidates. You absorbed impacts that would have ended others. You learned from pain that others would have used as an excuse to quit. The universe does not punish its chosen ones more harshly. It prepares them more thoroughly. Every harsh consequence was a gift, though it did not feel like one. It was the gift of immediate, undeniable feedback. It was the gift of accelerated learning. It was the gift of discovering that you can survive failure without being destroyed by it, that you can face your flaws without collapsing into shame, that you can make mistakes and still move forward with integrity intact. Most people never develop this capacity because they are never required to. They are protected from the full weight of their choices by systems that cushion them, by people who enable them, by second and third and fourth chances that teach them nothing except that consequences are negotiable. But you were never given that protection. And so you develop something they do not have, the bone-deep knowledge that your actions matter, that consequences are real, and that excellence is not optional. This is the foundation of true power, and it was built through every painful lesson that seemed, at the time, like proof that you were cursed. Chosen one, you have been shown 7 proofs, 7 patterns that most will never recognize because they are too busy denying what their instincts already know. But you have always sensed that something was different about how the world responds to you. You have felt the weight of invisible eyes watching, measuring, waiting. And now you know why. The reactions you trigger, the awareness you cannot shut off, the betrayals that sharpened you, the hostility that confirmed your power, the inability to settle, the self-reliance that was forced upon you, the harsh lessons that refined you. None of it was random. None of it was punishment. All of it was preparation. The question now is not whether people know you are the chosen one. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? The world is already responding to you. The field is already distorted by your presence. The only variable left is whether you will continue pretending to be ordinary or whether you will finally accept the role that has been waiting for you since before you had words to name it. The war is not coming. It is already here, and you have just been activated.